Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Neil, pick up the fat lad with you here in the mother fluffing house. And as the sounds of pussy come raining in. Hey, not from my house, mother fluffers. No. Hey, you don't mind a cat, do you? What's going on there?
I'm surrounded by it. What can I say?
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
there's a couple of cats wandering around behind me, and you might hear a dog at some point during the thing.
I know.
Maybe my kids will come here and say a few things too. Who knows?
Talk about value for money, mate. We're not even kicked off in this show yet. I haven't even introduced your ass, and already, you're an animal lover. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, over-delivering here on the Supernatural Strength channel. It's all about Ryan. Welcome to the show, mate. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It's been
On the chat line there, mate, when I looked in, it said, Ryan Espey, last chatted 1 year ago.
Oh, my. I
mean, is that even true? That can't be true.
It can't be true, because I'm sure we were on the one of your other shows on the phone at some point.
It might be that sometimes when you do Skype with a few people on, it must be something like that, but if that is the case, I apologise, that's not acceptable. So I should probably introduce you, mate. We're always very well.
If you are so inclined.
So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know this guy, let me give you a little bit of background on Mr. Ryan Espey. This guy is one of the most famous and accomplished super heavyweight arm wrestlers, not only from Canada, but also from around the world. He's one of the biggest arm wrestlers in the world. Everybody's got that archetypal understanding of an arm wrestler being an absolute giant. Well, this man fits the description. He's around 350 to 400 pounds as an average, apart from when he's on Visalis, ladies and gentlemen, when he drops to a very even 90 kilograms. And looks like he may have some kind of serious illness. But outside of that, he's always a big boy. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Ryan. We are talking multiple Canadian national, multiple world champion, multiple professional titles also in and out of Canada. There's not many things, mate, that you haven't tilted, to be perfectly honest. You've done a lot of things. I mean, we've seen you in Arm Wars, World Armwrestling League, you were in Moldova, you've been there, done there, and you bought the T-shirt saying strong on it in pink. Very cute.
Well, I mean, it's an Oberst T-shirt, right? I'm sure you know who that is.
Who, mate? Big fan of Rob. Not his hair, but a big fan of Rob.
Yeah, I guess that kind of sums it up. It's 21 times national titles, 21 national titles in Canada, 3 world titles within W.A.F, and a couple World Police and Fire Games titles are the major ones. Yeah.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Police and Fire Games, other famous faces that we have seen competing in the Police and Fire Games tournament. What about the current overall champion of the... Did you know about that? Did you know Saganashvili was in that? He competed in Dublin. Was it Dublin or Belfast in Ireland?
I did not know that. No, I did not know that.
I'm not sure what service he was in, mate, but I know that he was over there. I remember at the time, Dan Thomas. Are you familiar with Dan Thomas?
No, I'm not.
Dan Thomas, former British arm wrestler, gone into strongman now. He was over there with Keith Taylor refereeing, and he was on the phone to me saying, dude, we got a Georgian here with freak arms, It's Saganashvili. He competed in that, obviously won with ease when he was pretty much a newcomer to the sport. So those tournaments attract a little bit of talent, and you were one of the guys that was over there. But we want to start things way back. Way
back. 1976. Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Is that the birth?
That is the birth.
76. And what weight were you? I've got to ask this, mate. What weight were you when you were born?
I think it was around 7.5 pounds. So it wasn't a huge baby.
That's amazing, mate. That surprised me. I thought you were going to go like 14 pounds. 14
pounds, C-section, devastation. But no, just kind of normal.
Wow. We want to get into your sort of career in those early days, mate, when you sort of started to pack on a little bit of sporting prowess, what was your first choice? Where were you looking at initially? What was, when you were back in your schoolboy days, were you a sporty kid, an athletic kid?
You know what? I wasn't. I really wasn't. I started lifting weights when I was obsessed with being big and strong. I didn't give a crap about hockey, basketball, none of that stuff. So it was always an obsession with getting big and strong. I started lifting weights. I thought I was going to be Mr. Olympia someday. So then I realized that I hated the diet. So I just started lifting weights, getting stronger, got to the point where throughout high school I was getting bigger and stronger. Got a job as a bouncer at a local club, and believe it or not, all these things coming together is what kind of led me to arm wrestling.
What were your sort of early inspirations, mate, as a kid? Were you say you were always obsessed with being big and strong. Was it because I know there's sort of a big wrestling community over there, pro wrestling in Canada and in North America generally, but also you've had some pretty serious strongmen from Canada. And I wondered whether your sort of inspiration came from that side of the tracks or more the wrestling side.
It was a combination of bodybuilding and wrestling. So I was I'm a kid of the 80s, right? So the larger than life action stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone at the time. And then you have, when I was a small child, introduced, I think I was about 4 years old when I first watched Hulk Hogan actually in the ring at an AWA show. I got to grow up watching TV shows like The Incredible Hulk. And then from the time I was a small child right up until, even recently, watching the Hulkster go after it. And, that's the whole, if you were to jump it all over, but I eventually met him because of, the goals I set were actually, one of them was to meet him at some point, but that's later on in the story when we get into the Visalis business. Yeah,
make sure we don't forget that, though.
Yeah.
That's one that is coming in.
But yeah, it was always looking at wrestlers, big, strong guys, the Incredible Hulk Hogan. Those are my two early inspirations. I wanted to be those guys. Brute strong and just unstoppable in whatever I tried to do. And then, of course, I see the documentary Pumping Iron, and I think I'm going to be Mr. Olympia someday. And I start going to the gym, meeting a bunch of gym guys, and that was the goal, man. It was to get on a bodybuilding stage at some point.
And what about inspirations sort of closer to home, mate? With the family members, with the people within your sort of locality who you knew personally who were into or interested in strength sports? Or were you sort of the torchbearer for your family?
I'm kind of the guy. Like, there was nothing within my family that would have led me to this. Now I've watched the show a couple of times where there's early inspirations, but I always looked at my grandfathers that were all manual labor guys. One's a farmer, one's a mechanic or / blacksmith, who super strong hands and stuff, but I never really appreciated that at the time. I wanted to see bulging biceps and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So it was all about the physique.
It was all about the physique. And, of course, being strong, but, I never really had a path until I was always training for something, right? There was always something I was preparing for. I just hadn't found it yet.
What's your earliest memory of sports, mate? What's your sort of earliest memory of inspirational sport? When you were at school, so many people have had on the show, right? Particularly from North America, not so much Canada. They've got some kind of common path, whether it be wrestling, like high school wrestling, or high school football. Those are the two that so many people point to. It's like it was this cult following over there. Were you one of those dudes or totally different?
Not at all. I grew up in a small town where there was no opportunity for wrestling. There was no opportunity for football. I could either play basketball, volleyball, or hockey, and I hated all three of them. I actually played a couple of weeks of basketball. I went out for a football team, and I had to drive to Winnipeg, and when I was 16 years old and driving to Winnipeg by myself, priorities were a little different, we'll say. So I ended up leaving that team and deciding I wanted to drink and have fun with my friends instead. There was no real sporting, the background of sports, it just wasn't there. I didn't do any of that stuff. I was more interested in trying to be and look like a badass whatever form that came in. It had nothing to do with playing a sport, getting involved in any of that stuff. It was, I guess you would consider me to be a bit of an outlier, because when I found arm wrestling, I dialed right in on it. Although along the way, I branched off into all kinds of other niche sports. I was never, I'll say I wasn't a team sport guy, but I always appreciated, like if I was flipping the channels, all 12 of them back when I was a kid, and I found World's Strongest Man on TV, that's what I was watching.
Yeah.
I would flip past hockey to watch that any day.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I must admit, I can identify with that, mate, without a doubt.
And my favorite guy, Magnus for Magnuson. So back in the early 90s, that was the guy. Like, he was my favorite guy. Yeah.
Well, have you met Mag?
I have.
I mean, what a lovely bloke that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's such a tremendous guy. A very, very good friend of mine, actually. He referees all the Giants events that we do.
Yeah, when I was 2 years into arm wrestling, I met him, and he said, I asked him if he wanted to arm wrestle, and he goes, "No, but you can deadlift with me." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I'll do that."
He was on like quite a few as well over there, wasn't he, at that time, in Canada and America?
He did a bunch of...
But he was on various adverts, I remember him telling me. I think he was bigger over there in terms of people fame than he was over here.
The funny thing is, I saw him more recently in, I think it was a couple of beer commercials or something that he has just, in the last year. I was like, what the hell? Like, Magnus for Magnuson hasn't competed in a long time, and here he is all of a sudden getting commercials in North America.
That wasn't the one where he's a Viking, was it?
Maybe it was.
Yeah, I know he's done a few things where he's been a Viking. I think if anybody's called Magnus, they like sign that motherfucker up for Viking.
Yeah.
Because I know Magnus Samuelsson, different country, the Swede. He was in a show called Last Kingdom. Have you ever come across that?
Like, I have not watched it, but I am aware of the show, and maybe it's on the list.
He had a pretty significant role in a couple of series, so it's worth checking that out as well. A little bit of a acting career in there going on.
Well, I can tell you that my probably before I was interested in arm wrestling, I was interested in strongman.
Now, this is good stuff, mate, because I want to definitely dig into your strongman thing, because you're not your normal dude that we get on the show who's been 100% focused on one thing or another. You've bounced around sports, very macho sports. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a weird blend with you. You've got strongman, powerlifting, MMA, and arm wrestling. I mean, that's a pretty good lineup of man sports there, right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were a porn star as well, I think you've probably ticked pretty much every box.
Yeah. If you go to my gym, you'll see a whole bunch of arm wrestling trophies, a whole bunch of trophies for powerlifting, some bench press record certificates. You'll see a few for strongman, one for mixed martial arts, and then a couple for darts.
For darts? Holy shit. Another man sport. What's going on? It's my Manly Pursuit. Do you ever think about writing a Manly Pursuits book, Ryan? Because I know you're quite an intelligent lad. You're articulate. You could probably pull it off.
Wow, maybe.
The art of Manly Pursuits.
Yeah,
you need to do that, mate. One of them little books you can get, give somebody at Christmas. Here you go, Dad. Read that. Sort that. You can play darts, can lift a car, and if they don't work out, leather somebody. No problem.
Yep.
It's pretty good area to go into, mate. We're going to start with strongman, right? Because you're heading down that road. How the did you get into strongman? Were you at the stage at this point where you've gone into this growing spirit? Because I was trying to think about this before we came on, and I can't even remember the exact country we were in, but the first time I met you in person, I believe, was at the Worlds, at the W.A.F Worlds, and I remember you were the most humble, genteel, lovely bloke possible. You came up and introduced yourself like I wouldn't know who you were, and I was very aware of who you were. And just a very, very open, very genuine young man, but I'm going to say you looked young. And I think I was young back then. I think it must have been, I bet it was 20 plus years ago. Easily. I thought it would have been around the late 90s, early 2000s, but correct me if I'm wrong. Do you know where that was?
It was either 2000. Well, I was at the Worlds in 1998 as a spectator in Thunder Bay. I had not gotten to the level where I qualified for the World Championship, but it was only I think it was about a 7 or 8 hour drive, and I went and I watched. But I would have
Did you go to Japan?
I did go to Japan in 2005. 2005.
2005. Okay.
Yes, but it would have been either 2001 in Springfield, Illinois, or 2001 in Poland, 2002 in Springfield, or 2003 in Ottawa.
It was 2001 in Poland.
Yep. Yeah.
I remember because you would congratulate me on winning. That was the conversation. So it was 2001. And yeah, holy shit. So when did you start arm wrestling? How old were you?
21 years old. 1997.
Wow. And you came in with a bang as well, didn't you? You came in with like a bit of gusto.
Well, I had some, I wasn't quite at the Brendan Lemon Mulvihill level of attitude yet, but I certainly had some. And I came in trying to assert my dominance, but, I started strongman and arm wrestling right around the same time. In fact, arm wrestling would have been first. So in May of that year, I competed in my very first arm wrestling tournament. In July, I competed in my very first strongman event.
Were the two sort of intrinsically linked from where you were training? Was the gym you were practicing at sort of had an affiliation with both sports, or was there someone that led you into those, or did you just think, you know what, I'm going to have a crack at both of these?
Well, there was a guy that, yes to everything you just asked, but there was a guy that decided it all happened in my hometown, all around the same time. Mm-hmm. So there was a guy that was planning the strongman event, and he was hanging up posters at the gym, and he was a guy that, I kind of looked up to and went to for advice and talked to, and he says, yeah, I'm putting on this strongman event, and I want you there. And he poked me in the chest and said, you're entering. So I entered, and then along the way, you want to focus on strongman first? He said, you're doing it? And as far as I could tell, I'm not aware of another strongman competition being held in Canada prior to 1997.
Wow, that's a claim.
Yeah.
I am shocked. Is that the case? That's the case. So that was, as far as you're aware, that's the first strongman event in Canada.
Yep. That's as far as I'm aware, as far as modern strongman events are concerned, that may be the first organized one in Canada.
Wow. I need to check that out with my man Colin Bryce and see if he can throw any light on that.
Definitely in the West, for sure. And they had some cool events. Some of them were a little hokey, but we had some that we were pulling semis with harnesses back then. So it was interesting. I was around 265 pounds, 270. So it wasn't as big as I am now. But I ended up entering this event, and I won. I won the whole thing. And there was guys from all over the province that came, and, strongman was a thing where you enter that one event, and then there's literally nothing else going on for 2 years after that.
Had you already powerlifted at any level at that point? Were you, you didn't say about competition, but were you aware that in the gym you could pull a massive dead, you had a big bench, you've obviously talked about the fact you've won things for bench, so were you at a high level in all of the sort of solid strongman staple events, so the dead, the press, the squat, where was your level in all of those?
I think that I could probably move a lot better, which was what carried me through there. I had functional strength. I couldn't, I bet my deadlift and my squat were 500 pounds, which is not huge for entering in strongman competitions. My bench was probably 500 pounds too, though. So I was always a big bench guy, and I could put up a respectable number on the bench press. But we entered that strongman event, and it was, I squeaked in there. I won the whole thing. And then 2 years goes by, and I get a call in late 1998 from Hugo Girard, and he's looking
very
for
famous Canadian strongman.
He's looking for representation from Manitoba to enter the first ever Canada Strongest Man competition, which was held in 1999.
Holy Christ, this is surprising to me, Ryan. I'm not going to lie. Because right back in, oh my God, I was a kid. You know, you had famous Canadian strongmen then, and I know they came from Tom McGee, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and when was that? That's got to be 80s.
That's got to be 80s, but how did they get in there? I mean, you got to think back to the old World's Strongest Men competitions. They weren't all there because they were strongmen. They were there because they were football players or bodybuilders or had done something significant in another strength sport. Even arm wrestlers got in there based on the fact that they'd won a world championship.
I'm just looking up Tom McGee and get a bit of a timeline here if I can. Yeah, 1985 to 90. I mean, 1982, Canadian powerlifter and strongman competitor.
There you go.
From Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Yep.
Strangely enough.
Right down the road.
You wonder how these guys got into it, mate. But obviously Hugo Girard, probably post Tom McGee, maybe the most famous Canadian strongman.
I believe so.
To obviously the present time, you know?
Yeah.
So, wow. So you were saying the first Canada's Strongest Man that you were aware of was around the 90s.
It was 1999. And I went and I competed. And I was actually doing quite well. I was sitting around the middle of the pack about halfway through, and I had strained my back really badly and I had to pull out of the competition. Mm-hmm. But I was doing okay. I was holding my own, and with no focus on strongman at all at that point. Like, I had gotten 6 months notice to train, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing back then as far as competing in strongman. So I did the Canada Strongest Men competition in 1999, and then again, it was another long break. And then around 2002, 2003, strongman started getting organized in Manitoba and across the country, but Manitoba was really into it. And at that point, I started competing again, and I was able to win the Manitoba Strongest Man in 2004, competing in the Western Canadian Championships, where I took, I think it was 4th place in Western Canada. Mm-hmm. And then was really strong. Like, I was getting to the point where I was thinking about making a run, because we had Dave Ostland, if you remember him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yank.
He was a World's Strongest Man competitor. He came up and he was doing a local show I was at. And I was kicking his ass. I was doing really well. And then I ended up in an event where there was a farmer's walk, but the weight was so light that I was literally running with it. Mm-hmm. And I tripped, and it rocketed me into the ground, and ended up with a small concussion. Finished the event, but said it wasn't really my fault that I fell. It was an untested course, and there was like wavy parts on the pavement that nobody was aware of. And I said, that's it, I'm done until you guys kind of get your stuff together here. Yeah, and I never went back.
Strongman has always been. Do you know what, Ryan? We've ended up a place I never knew we were going to go, and I am absolutely shocked. All the stuff you've said there about the Canadian strongman scene, because, I mean, Hugo Girard, I mentioned Tom McGee earlier, but let's not be silly here. Canada, I mean, wasn't Louis Cyr Canadian?
Louis Cyr was Canadian, yeah.
Quebec.
He was, yeah.
Quebec, wasn't he?
That's correct.
You've got, I mean, and many people cite Cyr as being, you know, the strongest man in history type thing, and wow. I'm absolutely shocked that it only seemed to get really cracking in the 90s. Yeah, amazing stuff. I did not know that. Because I've always thought there was the other kid that always impressed me when I was over in Canada and I met him, and then I met him again at the Arnold as a spectator, I don't think he was competing there, was, oh my God, killing me. Mind blank. Dominic Filiu.
Yes. Yeah.
Mate, the man was huge.
The guy is massive. He is massive.
I mean, he's rest his soul, he's dead now, isn't he, Dominic?
I don't know.
I thought he was dead.
But 6'10" or something
believe
like
he passed away. But I'll tell you what, that one of the biggest men I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I remember in Canada, the first time I saw him in person, I looked at, he was stood at the side of me, and I double took. He was so massive. It was sort of like, holy that was some hombre.
He makes Matt Mask look short.
Yeah, the man was just the absolute mass of the guy. What an hombre. That was on bit. I'm shocked, mate. I am absolutely shocked. I was looking up the Tom McGee stuff there, and I didn't know that it was so late that Canada was sort of brought to the party in strongman. Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So, it sounds like a real shame that you didn't get into that and pursue it a lot more fully, mate.
Well, there was a few things along the way, right? Like I've got degenerative disc disease, which really isn't a disease. It just means you've beat the shit out of your body so much that your discs are starting to compress. And I can almost pinpoint the exact moment that happened significantly. It was in the Western Canadian Strongman Championships when we were doing super yoke with about 950 pounds. And I did really well. I just walked the course with it, but every step I took, I just felt it doing this. It's compressing. And, I went and got my back checked out. And there was a bit of a weak link there in my lower back. So I'm not, it doesn't hurt me. I just kind of decided to hang it up. Yeah.
I mean, it's a brutal, people talk about all strength sport having a heavy toll on the body. I don't think many, having seen it up close and personal, I don't think many, top strongmen in that, they very, very often you see significant injuries that you would describe as significant in any sport in one event, and an hour later the guy's out doing another. And people don't know. We'll be at some of the arena shows where, big events, and a guy's done some serious damage. He's blown a bicep tendon, they've damaged a hamstring, they've done something pretty gnarly. The guy's out there an hour later. Still
I've tried
some atrocious way,
When I hurt my back in Canada's Strongest Man, I went out and attempted the next event, and it was deadlift. So, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, pride will get you every time. Every time.
I mean, give me some numbers, mate. PBs on your deads and stuff like that, because obviously I want to go into the powerlifting thing as well. Obviously, if I'm taking it the powerlifting then came after the strongman, so you sort of gravitated towards that.
It did. It came after. It was actually something I just kind of played around with, but I focused strictly on the bench press. So I did bench only meets. Okay. I had respectable squats, respectable deadlifts, 7-ish kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But my bench, I had an over 600 pound bench.
Ooh.
And we're talking like single ply, full pause, under the association that doesn't allow all the ridiculous things like triple ply denim shirts and all that kind of stuff. So we were still pretty strict. And when I was a kid, and when I say a kid, I mean into my 20s, I would walk into the gym and I would do a warm-up set, and I'd have 550 pounds in the bar, set number 2. And I was doing that for a few reps. Like my bench was really good, but when I went into the strict powerlifting and, there was all kinds of, potential drug testing and all that kind of stuff. And I was almost the first Manitoban to put up over 600 pounds. At 605, halfway up, and it stalled on me. 1 month later, another guy did it. So.
God damn it. I mean, a 600-pound bench is a massive lift, mate, by any standards, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because bench is only just starting to get a bit of recognition now. Probably because of Julius, to be honest, because, I mean, guys from our sport, like Eric Spoto, did massive bench. But it's fair to say that Julius is different breed, isn't he? I mean, just God's gift to bench press.
Well, you got Mendelsohn taking another run at it, so I'm excited to see what he.
I did not know that either. So Mendy's going to Gonna throw his hat in the ring one more time, eh?
I think so.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
So, bench pressing, powerlifting, strongman. I'm taking it you gravitated towards powerlifting because it must have been a little bit more formality in terms of the organisation. It doesn't have that wild element that strongman does. Was that something that you were seeking out there?
I almost ended up in powerlifting because I had a couple of friends of mine that wanted to do it, and I was training with them. And then I just kind of, I looked at what the numbers were at some of these meets, and I thought, I'm doing this already. Let's jump in there and give it a go. So I went at bench press for a couple of years. I established and re-broke my own record twice for Manitoba in the bench press. I think I did it twice in the same meet, actually. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I pumped it up to, and the cool thing about it is, like, my 550 provincial record is still standing because they retired the weight class. So those stay on the books forever, right? So it's
nothing wrong with that, mate.
Bit of a legacy item there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, I was doing that, but I mean, it was fun, and all of these things I did took me away from arm wrestling, though. That's the problem, right? Mm-hmm. Because I remember when I had, and we'll jump around a little bit, in 2001 I had my super match with Travis in Halifax, and I didn't have much for him, right? But at the time I was also training to fight. And Joyce King said to me, he says, do you want to be pretty good at a whole bunch of things, or do you want to be really good at one thing? And it was a bit of an eye-opener for me. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kick ass at one thing, but despite that, I still jumped around all over the place. So if you look at the timeline of all of these things, 2004 I was competing in arm wrestling, strongman, and I fought. So it was a busy year.
That is a lot of struggling. I get, you know what I mean? I get the whole Joyce King comment there where she's saying, you want to be good at a lot of things or really good at one thing. I mean, my wife said the same thing to me, and the bitch wouldn't let go of my ears. But what I will say is, all of those sports, being as intense as they are, as damaging as they are, you're like queuing up for injury school. I mean, yeah. They don't match. Arm wrestling and what arm wrestling does to you, fighting, MMA, guy throwing you in an arm bar, and then you're going to go bench press? I mean, I can't even imagine what was going on your elbows and shoulders when you'd been getting into... I mean, did you train on the ground? Did you train to ground fight as well? You were doing subs and...
Oh, 100%. It was actually maybe even my preference. But the crazy thing about bench is, when I went in there and I competed the first time, and I had 500 pounds on the bar, I wasn't using wrist wraps. And the guys looked at me like I was crazy, but my wrists were so strong from arm wrestling that I didn't think I needed them.
Yeah, you didn't have any shoulder problems, elbow problems, when you were going into massive bench presses after you'd arm wrestled, and Jesus, I can't throw a ball. But because I get problems if I go skimming stones with my son.
It's just weird. My upper body has never really sustained any serious injuries, except directly from an arm wrestling match.
Right. So here's the next one, right?
Okay.
Most guys that you see come into the sport from a static strength sport, even strongman, but certainly a static strength sport background. And I'm going to cite a couple of examples here from the world of bench press because we'll keep that common vein running through this, okay? Jan Germanos. Mm-hmm. 1. Scott Mendy. 2. And to be honest, although to a slightly lesser extent, but more recently, I'd say that Eric as well, all favour a hooking style, pressing style, or at least drag hook style. You're a top roller by choice. I'm not saying you won't. I've seen you in dead wrist press. I've seen you wherever it needs to go. I know you can arm wrestle anywhere it needs to go. But if I go up there and I say, okay, Ryan, pick your poison, you're top rolling. How does that work? Because I know you're tall, but you're not you're not a rangy levered guy. You're not the guy that's tying his shoelaces stood up. So walk me through that.
That goes all the way back to when I started. So I trained with guys that were much, much smaller than me. And they always, and I'm not sure if the relevance of that or not, but I always tell people I learned to arm wrestle like I was a much smaller guy. And it was Mike Barrett, it was Terry DeBates, it was Miles Wolko. And they also beat it into my head that if you want longevity in the sport, you need to top roll versus get into a deep hook battle. Because they thought that was the way it is. If you want your time to be lengthy, arm wrestle as efficiently as possible. And in their minds, and that meant learning how to top roll.
Wow.
And possibly because all of those guys, like Mike Barrett, it took me 3 years to beat him. But if I went inside with him, it would have taken me 6. Like,
you think that's also why you're so good on the left? Because Mike's left is a banger.
The first tournament I ever entered, I never even entered the left arm because I was so not confident with it that I thought it was just going to be a waste of time. So I got talked into it in the second one, and then I don't know, it kind of evolved, and I can't do any, and I've had this conversation with lots of guys that are not left arm dominant. I can't do anything with my left arm. Nothing. Except arm wrestle. I can't throw a ball. I can't write my name. I can't do anything with it. So I taught it how to arm wrestle. And I think because it didn't have any bad habits or anything like that, and I was able to train it properly right from zero, that's probably why my left is better. Interesting.
So you've socialized your left into being a good arm.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that you don't do any natural chores or tasks with it. You know, because I've heard fighters, okay, and they say, oh, I'm going to start jabbing with my left. I'm going to change in the stance. They're going to fight differently. And if they want to do that, they start going about weird shifts in what they're going to do. Like they've got did you know he had a dominant hand when you tie a shoelace? I did not know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, a dominant hand. The hand that you grip the lace with is apparently the dominant shoelace hand. Never knew that until I talked to a fighter and they told me this. They walked me through the psyche of this. And I'm like, really? Maybe he made it up. We were drinking a lot of wine at this point in time. And he'd been leathered all night, so you never know. But he said, oh yeah, it's your dominant hand. So I've started doing things that he was brushing his teeth with his left arm. Christ only knows what else he was doing with his left arm. But he had gone to a really exacting level of, I'm going to change everything I do, I'm going to change it to my left arm, and that will bring it along. Did you ever do anything like that to sort of train the left?
No. I actually took, I had ball bearings that I would try to train for dexterity in my fingers. That's it. But nothing else beyond that. And just training with arm wrestling, that's it.
Are you stronger in any position, in any plane of motion with your left?
Yes.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I can generate more back pressure with my left arm.
Wow. Any injury path that links up to that? Have you been significantly hurt in some area that would restrict your right at any point?
I had been significantly injured in my left, if you can believe that. That may have led me to actually top roll more because I had dislocated my left wrist in an arm wrestling match.
Interesting.
And any kind of inside movement became very difficult. My range of motion became limited in my left hand. And I was purely a top roller. Now I can stop and pull inside, but it's definitely not my A move on my left arm.
No, I mean, I've heard a lot of cases where somebody's arm or style has progressed because of a affliction or an injury or something that's happened.
Yeah.
But often when you've got an arm that people perceive you as being dominant on, it's either a case of you used to have a good right arm, you screwed it up and you had to go left, or you had a natural inclination towards that arm. Let's say if I put a football in front of you, Ryan, which foot are you kicking it with?
Right.
Sorry, right. You're going right. So you're right-footed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're a weirdo. Well, that's fair enough.
Definitely right.
Are you left dominant? Do you think you are left dominant really though? Or do you think your left is just on par with your right and everybody else is stronger right?
That's what I think it is. I think my left arm is closer to my right arm than most people's left and right are. That's where I think it's at. And as far as arm wrestling goes, I think that it's gotten to a level that make it very difficult for people that may even be left-hand dominant to deal with.
Mm. I know I had a series of joint operations on my right arm when basically led to the end of my career. But whilst those operations were going on, you may even remember this. In Japan, 2005, I competed in a cryo cuff. I had a cryo cuff on my right arm, pumping ice into my arm while I was competing. And I got second in the world on the left arm with a fucking cryo cuff on my right.
Wow. I do recall something like that.
And that was I think it was my second of the 3 joint rebuilds that had happened about a month and a half earlier. So I was knackered. But yeah, I competed in the British Nationals with a cryo cuff on. I think I took second to Paul Maiden in the British Nationals or I may have even won the left. I can't remember what the fuck. But I competed with my arm destroyed a number of times, pretty Sarah Bachman style-y, you know. Yeah. But it was just, at that time, the arm was in a frame. It couldn't physically move. It was sort of wired together and cast and bound. So I couldn't actually do anything to it. It was just in a static position. There was no risk to it at all. It was a way to keep the rest of my body moving. And I knew that was going to be on there for sort of 6-7 months, whatever I did. So I wanted to keep my body balanced and exercising, you know, so I didn't lose shape or focus or get depressed about it or whatever it may be. But rarely have I ever come across anyone who's not dominant or not stronger, perceived as stronger on any arm where they haven't had some kind of injury or damage that's led to that kind of scenario. Very unusual, mate. It's it's a bit of a unique entity in that. I'm just looking, we're 42 minutes into that. Bloody flew by. Absolutely flew by. Ladies and gentlemen, that probably wraps up this first episode with Ryan Espey, but we're nowhere near done. We will be back with this big man very, very soon for part 2 of Ryan Espey. And if you've got questions that you want us to pose to Ryan, if you've got questions you want us to ask Ryan, please send them in, PM them. We're probably going to jump onto the second part in just a moment, but we will get to him in part 3, part 4, however far we go with this, and I know that Ryan's got a great deal to say. So ladies and gents, before I wrap it up, if this is your first visit to the Supernatural Strength channel, please like, share, subscribe, have it tattooed on your substantial penis, and let everybody know what's going on. And until that time, see you later, peeps.